This is the Jeff McLeod Show, where we talk about God, America, the things that make our country great, and so much more. Good afternoon, everybody, and happy Friday. It's the last day of the work week. I hope you've had an awesome week so far. Welcome back to the Jeff McLeod Show. We have some news to discuss from last night, particularly the James Comey indictment. So let's begin. We're first going to start with a little background into James Comey's life. He was born December 14th, 1960 in Yonkers, New York. So currently he is 64 years old. He's going to be 65 later this year. Fun fact, he's 6'8", so he is a giant of a human being. But let's get into the important stuff. In 1982, he earned his bachelor's in chemistry and religion from the College of William and Mary. And a couple years later, he earned his Juris Doctor from the University of Chicago Law School in 1985. So obviously, in order to become a lawyer, you need a pretty extensive education. You need a 4-year degree, and then you need an additional 2-year degree, and then you have to pass the bar test, which he did all those things. He's obviously a very intelligent man. I don't believe he's a good man, but I do believe he's very intelligent. So he was able to get through his 4 years and also law school. He became a U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York from 2002 to 2003. And this is where he started rising in popularity and fame. But this is nowhere near the level of fame and infamy he's going to receive when he was the FBI director in 2013. So he prosecuted several high-profile cases, including organized crimes and security fraud. He was also the Deputy Attorney General from 2003 to 2005, the second highest official in the Department of Justice under President George W. Bush. So he was very, very qualified. So he obtained this position in his younger 40s, which would be relatively young for a government position like this. He played a key role in standing against the Bush administration's warrantless wiretapping program in 2004. That was probably as a result of the Patriot Act, threatening resignation over the legality of it. He ended up, after that, going into private sector work, and he held senior positions at Lockheed Martin and HSBC Holdings, and he focused on compliance and risk. So obviously, whenever you hear the name Lockheed Martin, I don't know why, for me at least, I think of the word corrupt. I think of a bunch of these billionaires and very rich millionaires who are trying to exploit people, and that's what I think of when I think of the name James Comey. In 2013, he obtained his highest position yet, and he was appointed for a 10-year term as the FBI director under President Obama. He wouldn't even serve half of it. He would serve up until 2017 when President Donald Trump would fire him from the position. He became a central figure in the 2016 U.S. presidential election due to the Clinton email investigation. By the way, he investigated the Clinton emails, but he didn't even release them. Most people even forget this name, but Julian Assange, he was a big central figure in that 2016 election because he released several of Hillary Clinton's emails to the public a few weeks before the election. And that really could have affected that election because Donald Trump won by a razor small margin. And if Julian Assange had not released those emails, who knows where we would be right now. But also James Comey invested Clinton's emails as he should have, right? The whole entire Benghazi scandal where there were hundreds of emails that were on unsecure servers that needed to be investigated. If Donald Trump had done the same exact thing, he would be in jail right now. They were clearly, with Donald Trump, he has a very small room for error. And Hillary Clinton had a much larger room for error just because of her political prominence, being the First Lady of the United States, the First Lady of the First Lady in Arkansas, and all the different political appointments she held, especially as the Secretary of State under President Obama. It was announced in July 2016 that Hillary Clinton was extremely careless but recommended no criminal charges. Days before the election, he disclosed reopening the probe, which many argue influenced voter perceptions. They could argue that, but part of the reason that could be argued is, like I said, Julian Assange, who was in charge at the time, I believe, of WikiLeaks, he was the one that released many of the emails. And after he released those emails, James Comey said, okay, maybe we should launch another investigation into the Clinton emails. But it never even ended up happening. So they can talk all they want about, oh, Donald Trump's a fascist, he colluded with Russia. But in reality, Donald Trump didn't even go after Hillary Clinton, and he didn't tell the Justice Department to go after Hillary Clinton and all of her email scandals. So I actually think Donald Trump's better than they are with that. So, Trump and Russia. After Donald Trump became president, Comey confirmed the FBI was investigating possible ties between Trump's campaign and Russia. Right now, it's impossible to actually, we'll see if anything comes of this, but it's impossible to link James Comey with Hillary Clinton's campaign. If that were possible, we're going to get into it a little bit later. I would actually be for James Comey being arrested. And I am very, very, very conservative. I don't think people should be going after their political opponents at all. Like, I don't think Joe Biden should have been going after Donald Trump and the whole entire Justice Department. So I am a little bit sympathetic as to the charges that we're going to hear about that they're charging against James Comey. For instance, Donald Trump, he was charged, or there have been people that were charged for lying in court. Obviously, they're just trying to get you on something when you get arrested for that. You shouldn't lie in court, obviously, but it happens, and they might ask you a question like, what was the weather on July 14th, 2015? And you might say, oh, I think it was sunny that day. And if it was raining, all of a sudden you're getting put in jail for just a simple mishap, like something you just forgot. So many times lawyers, and they did this with Donald Trump, they advise you not to say anything at all, and just let the lawyers speak, because if you speak, sometimes you can get yourself into trouble, especially when you have political enemies. And Donald Trump has many political enemies. James Comey's on the other side, and he created many enemies just as a result of how he treated Donald Trump. So we'll get into the charges in a little bit. We're going to talk about why the Trump administration doesn't really like James Comey. I already mentioned the Russia collusion. So clearly the FBI was coordinating with the Clinton campaign, and basically they made up this whole entire Russia hoax. And there needs to be a little bit more data to come in to definitively prove that, but it seems pretty clear right now that there was a link between the two. And we don't know necessarily if the head of the FBI was a part of it, James Comey, but it certainly is possible. And if he was directly conspiring with the Clinton campaign to influence the election, that's jail worthy, because you're trying to overturn, or not overturn, but influence a fair election and make something rigged for the political opponent. And that's wrong. And that's everything against what our constitutional republic stands for. And I want to make it clear, we're a constitutional republic, not a democracy, but it's completely against what we stand for. So if that was the case, and he legitimately helped the FBI collude with the Clinton campaign, which is certainly not out of the realm of possibility, I think he deserves jail time, because that is a serious offense. However, on the other hand, if he did not know, and maybe some other parts of the FBI did know, it was incompetent, but I don't believe he deserves jail time. And also what he's being charged with, and we're going to go over these two charges, I don't believe they're jail worthy, even though news organizations are claiming he could face 5 years. I think it's kind of stupid. But let's move on. I think he could be in trouble for things that are a lot worse and legitimate than what he's being charged with. It's almost like where Al Capone was charged with tax evasion, and we all know Al Capone was in charge of many killings, but they could never trace it all the way back to the top. And a lot of times that's true with any head department. It could be true with the president. It could be true with the FBI director. It could be true with maybe the housing and urban development, whatever agency that an individual is running. A lot of times you're never going to be able to trace decisions all the way to the top, but many times those individuals knew. So let's go down and talk about some different controversial remarks that James Comey made about Donald Trump. So the first one, that he was morally unfit to be president. This happened after Donald Trump fired James Comey in 2017 and the Mueller investigation was launched. So regarding Russia and all the nonsense that we know about now, this happened a year after or so. Here's what James Comey said. He said that Trump was morally unfit to be president. Let me tell you, there are many of these politicians, and I don't advocate for it. I'm a Christian, as you all know. Many of these politicians are immoral. It's a sad fact. Donald Trump certainly in his past was. Now, do I believe he was a pedophile? Do I believe that he was doing really messed up things with Jeffrey Epstein? No, I don't. But I guess if the Epstein files are released, we'll find out. But I don't believe so. But there are plenty of politicians like Bill Clinton who it's obvious he had a close connection and tie with Jeffrey Epstein. He had multiple sexual allegations. Monica Lewinsky is right there in the front while he was president. Donald Trump, most of the allegations were prior to him being president. So, and let me run through it real quick. When Comey's saying he's morally unfit, and around that time is when he was being accused of going into a store and raping a woman. And honestly, Donald Trump is rich. He could have whoever he wants. I know people have said it and they take it wrong, but it's certainly true. He really could, and it would make no sense for him to go after somebody who is not a supermodel in a store and do that as a public figure. So I don't believe that was true at all, and it came out years later. So, and it's that person was a known liar. I'm not going to even get into detail about her. It's not even worth mentioning her name. But the fact there's all these different things going around about Donald Trump being morally unfit. Most of these guys have some scandals, right? And they've had issues with women in the past. A lot of these politicians, if you dig into them, okay, RFK, I know he right now is in office. He did. If you really want to get into detail, you can talk about Bill Clinton especially. And even for those of you who love Barack Obama, there is dirt on Barack Obama, which a lot of people don't like to address because most Democrats love Barack Obama, but there definitely is dirt on Barack Obama, and it was released by someone that would be considered very liberal. So you can get dirt on a lot of these politicians. So the fact that James Comey said he was morally unfit, there's been issues for years, going back to JFK and Roosevelt, FDR, I want to be clear. There's just been issues. You can go all the way back to some of our founding fathers. You can go back to Thomas Jefferson. So there's always been those type of people. It's not right, but it's just a sinful world that we live in. He criticized Trump's repeated falsehoods, quote unquote, his treatment of women, and his response, or lack thereof, to the white supremacist rally in Charlottesville. And it's pretty clear that Charlottesville rally, it's complete bunk that Trump supported that. So I don't even want to hear that. I don't want to hear that Donald Trump's treatment of women's bad. I will say he's called some names, and he shouldn't have, but he does that with men too. It's not just a woman thing. He does that with people he doesn't like. Not for that. You shouldn't be resorting to ad hominem attacks. You should be arguing about substantive things. But I'm not going to. But anyway, his treatment of women's bunk. Or to the white supremacist rally in Charlottesville. Okay, that's from Time magazine. He also suggested that Trump may have committed obstruction of justice when reportedly asking him to drop or limit the FBI's investigation into Michael Flynn, who was Trump's former national security advisor. And let's be honest, the whole entire January 6th thing, 2020, that was a whole entire witch hunt. Donald Trump never told any of his men in power. He never specifically told people to march and break into the Capitol building. He just told them to protest, and there's nothing wrong with him saying that. And there was a big witch hunt on Michael Flynn, Rudy Giuliani, and others that was completely not right. And those people really probably had years of their lives taken away from just falsehoods and being just pursued and sued relentlessly. Then there was a P-tape allegation, okay? And this is even worse with Comey. And this is where I start questioning Comey's accuracy and whether he's actually telling the truth. James Comey is known to be a liar. He lied and said that he was on a high school basketball team. You would expect someone 6'8" to be on a high school basketball team. But it turns out when he graduated law school, he realized that this could be a problem. So he retracted the statement and said, no, I was never part of my high school basketball team. So that was a lie. And right here, it's a blatant lie. You don't have to have a very high IQ to understand this. In an interview, Comey said, I honestly never thought these words would come out of my mouth, but I don't know whether the current president of the United States was with prostitutes peeing on each other in Moscow in 2013. It's possible, but I don't know. That is utterly vile. I'm not even like, it's utterly vile. I don't even want to talk about it much. For you to say that he did that, number one, Trump never even went to Russia often at all. Number two, he has, like I said, Donald Trump has always had supermodel wives. He has no need to do this. And I promise you, Trump might have some moral shortcomings, but it's not laying and sleeping with prostitutes and then peeing them. That's just disgusting. So we're going to move on. That's a blatant lie from James Comey. And the initial report that even happened, that the individual is known to have, like, it's known to be very, very shady. Even people that the people that said, "Oh, this happened," they started doubting it, and they said, "Oh, we don't actually know if it definitively happened. It didn't. It was made up to make Donald Trump look bad." So he did not assert the fact occurred, only that he couldn't rule it out. Anybody that was not politically motivated could rule that out. It's just common sense. The initial report that even happened, it was pretty much debunked. So this is utter garbage. In his book and memoir, recounting discussions with Trump, Comey describes that Trump repeatedly denied that the allegations were true. Okay, so I guarantee you they're not. Trump asked Comey to look into it, apparently to clear the record, in the words of James Comey, and to reassure his wife Melania, he claimed. So it's just on and on. It's just a lot of lies. And how can I trust somebody when they say, no, I didn't collude with the Hillary campaign, and we didn't collude and try to get Hillary Clinton to the White House? How would I believe that when he's lying about stupid things, right? Things that are inconsequential, like being on a basketball team, like Donald Trump doing some vulgar things that clearly didn't happen. How can I trust a man like that where he's known to be a liar? I can't trust him when the stakes are that much higher, when he could be facing major jail time for him to tell the truth. So I can't trust this guy. Comey also should suggest that the Trump's insistence on disbelieving or denying the allegations, sometimes in ways that seem evasive or misleading, gave Comey reason to be uncertain and to regard them as unresolved. Request to let go of the Flynn investigation. We're going to continue. One of the most consequential episodes is Comey's claim that Trump, during a February 2017 meeting, asked him to let go of the FBI's investigation into Flynn. Donald Trump did this because Michael Flynn was a personal friend, and he didn't want a big witch hunt going on with Michael Flynn. And a lot of these guys, like I said, they had a little bit of jail time. Steve Bannon, had jail time. Rudy Giuliani got just sued relentlessly. Michael Flynn is another one. And to me, it's completely unacceptable that these guys had their lives ruined over just political fighting and posturing. It just makes me sick that politics has gotten to this point. We shouldn't arrest people we disagree with or go after them, maybe because they had a small shortcoming. Most of these politicians, you could go back on their financial records or somewhere in their life and pull up dirt, and you could try to arrest them over this. It's completely unfair. Comey said he interpreted that as a direction, or at least a strong expectation. Trump and his representatives have denied that it was in order to end the Russia probe or to broadly interfere, and that's obvious now. It is very obvious the Clinton campaign colluded with the FBI to try to get themselves elected. That's why they brought up the whole Russia hoax. So it's been proven false already. Russia had no ties to the 2016 election. On Trump lying constantly in comparisons to past misconduct, here's more. Comey has repeatedly criticized Trump for habitual dishonesty. A lot of people on the left have, by the way. However, when they fact-check Trump, there are things that Donald Trump has said that they said was wrong that turned out to be true. Number one, when Trump started calling COVID-19 the China virus, turns out COVID-19 did originate in the Wuhan lab in China, and Donald Trump was right. Many times the left, what they do is they fact-check us and they say, oh, you guys are wrong, and the information you're saying is invalid, when in reality what the left does is they go to sites that fact check our information, but those sites that they go to are left-leaning and biased to begin with. So in reality, they're fact-checking us with biased information, right? So they might be claiming it's unbiased, but the measuring stick they're using that claims to be unbiased is biased because it's promoted by left-wing politicians. So I'm done with the fact-checking and people saying that Donald Trump is lying. A lot of what you do is you're not relying on facts, you're relying on opinions. And the reason I'm getting so animated about this is a lot of times it's free speech. They're fact-checking free speech, and a lot of times what he's saying isn't a lie. It can't be proven true and it can't be proven false. Let that be known. If it can't be proven true, say, maybe instead of fact checking and saying it's wrong, maybe say it's possible. And even the ones that are proven wrong, for instance, the illegal border crossings, they weren't taking the 15 million number that Donald Trump was quoting and getting fact checked on. It's absolutely true. You had people that were unreported crossing the border. The Democrats, they were just using the statistics of the people that were detained. So they were being dishonest. So I'm tired of the left and people like James Comey saying Donald Trump is habitually dishonest. In reality, they're habitually dishonest. And I'm not saying Donald Trump is a saint and he doesn't lie from time to time as any politician does, but I'm saying they cover their quote unquote honesty and quote unquote fact checking with the guise or dishonesty with the guise of honesty, and it's completely illegitimate and it's opinion. So we have to make sure that we call them out on it, that a lot of their fact checking isn't true facts they're checking, it's opinion checking. So he said Trump lies both about big issues and small ones, and that those lies erode public trust and the rule of law. What about you lying about being a basketball player in high school and having to retract that once you graduate law school because you realize you could get in trouble for it later? What about lying about Donald Trump being with prostitutes and peeing? Come on, you got to be honest about yourself. You're a liar, and what you're doing is you're calling Donald Trump a liar to cover for yourself, and it's completely wrong. And I would not be surprised at all with James Comey that he colluded in this entire thing. Actually, I would be more surprised that he didn't collude than that he wasn't aware of it. So here's some more. In interviews and public remarks, Comey has sometimes framed the possibility that Russian intelligence holds or may hold compromising material called compromat on Trump or his associates. He's used that as a backdrop to argue that investigations into Russia should be vigorous and insulated from political pressure. Is that the best thing they always have up their sleeve, is to say, they colluded with Russia? Really? You can't come up with a new game plan? Like, you can't come up and make a better lie-up? Every single time, it's Russia, it's Russia, it's Russia. Every single time the right, they claim the right is violent. Oh, they're part of the KKK. Really? That's the only thing you can resort to, is there's a collusion with Russia, or within our own country. Oh, much of the right, Donald Trump is with the Proud Boys. You got to be kidding me. Like, it's so stupid. And you know, James Comey, if you ever watch this, you know you're not being honest. You know you're being disingenuous. It's complete and utter lies. Tell the truth, because your lies will be uncovered. And personally, as a Christian, the Bible says there's 6 things the Lord hates, yea, 7 are an abomination: a proud look and then a lying tongue. And Donald Trump, he's proud, so that's something he has to work on, if anybody that's liberal is watching. But a lying tongue. We have to make sure we get back to telling the truth. And the most important thing that we could do for our reputation and for the future is tell the truth. Don't necessarily tell our truth, because our truth can be wrong. Tell the Bible's truth, and come out, and if something's maybe gray and not shady, or things don't add up, like with James Comey, I'm going to call it out, and I'm going to be completely honest. So we need to make sure that we tell the truth no matter what, even when it's hard. And James Comey has lived a life of telling lies. And that's why I don't believe him right now. That's why I don't believe that he didn't collude with Russia. So I legitimately hope, if he colluded with Russia and he, as the FBI director, did that, I hope he does get arrested, because he was trying to change an entire election. Now, if he wasn't guilty of that, I hope he doesn't go to jail. I hope he doesn't go to jail for, quote unquote, maybe lying in court, right? Because he could have forgotten something. I hope he doesn't go to jail for maybe tampering, they're saying, with a court case, if he legitimately wasn't. I want him to be tried fairly, but if he was a part of this whole entire thing, he needs to be arrested, because he's part of the deep state, and he's part of the scum that caused this entire mess, part of the swamp that Donald Trump talked about in his first election cycle. Next, this is cryptic, so I don't know where I stand on this one. Instagram post controversy. In 2025, Comey posted on Instagram a photo of seashells arranged as the number 8647 with the caption, "Cool shell formation on my beach walk." Okay, so the number 86, I didn't know this, but that number stands for getting rid of something. And obviously Donald Trump was the 47th president, or is, of the United States. So that is awfully sus. What would be the entire point of putting 8647 on the sand? Like, is it a barcode? Your is that your social security number, James Comey? So now we can get your social security? I don't think so. I think that it's a little bit more nefarious than that. I think it's talking about the elimination of Donald Trump. And if it is, shame on him as a public figure. That's the reason Donald Trump was shot a year ago. That's the reason that Charlie Kirk and other conservatives right now are being fired at. ICE agents are being fired at because of people like James Comey who incite political violence. Completely unacceptable. I don't care who your opponent is. I dislike Barack Obama very strongly. I dislike Joe Biden very strongly, but it's bad for our country and it's never morally acceptable. In fact, it's always morally reprehensible to be okay with getting rid of or eliminating a political figure. Always. End of story. And if you're someone that's in Gen Z and you're part of whatever, there was some statistic recently that was mentioned, the 60% that's okay with eliminating or at least having political violence against a political opponent, shame on you. It's never acceptable, ever, 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 because our society will crumble if we all have that mindset. So going back to James Comey, he perpetuated this. So the 8647, the more I think about it, the more I think, what's even the point of those numbers? It had to have been saying get rid of Donald Trump. And people can interpret that differently. He might interpret, we could interpret it, I don't like him, so get him out of office. It could be impeach him. It could be for a lunatic, kill him. Completely unacceptable from somebody as high ranking as James Comey and with as big of a platform as James Comey. Unacceptable. And there's a reason Donald Trump fired you. There is. There's a reason Donald Trump fired you, and that's exactly why. You're not loyal. In fact, you don't want his best interest. You're speaking poorly about him all the time, when in reality, you don't have much character because you lie. So let's move down. Republicans and Trump allies reacted strongly, describing the post as a veiled threat or politically incendiary gesture. I would say it was very politically incendiary. And you see right now a conservative figure dead. You see Donald Trump was shot about a year ago. You see that there's been multiple attacks across the country on ICE agents. Completely unacceptable ever, ever, ever to mention to incite political violence. Ever. And Comey deleted the post. That makes me think that it was legit, another reason. And he said he did not intend violence and was unaware of the connotation. James, you're a smart guy. You're not stupid. Just admit when you did something. Maybe you could have said, I don't want Donald Trump to get hurt or anything, but I wish he wasn't the president. You could say that, and I would be like, fine, that's your freedom of speech. But you're lying through your teeth. What's the point of saying 8647? There is no point. So we see this, and we see all these different issues and character problems that James Comey has. And I want to reiterate, I don't think Donald Trump has the greatest character in the world. I don't. But I also don't think he's a pervert. And so I'm defending him from that. And I also don't think Donald Trump would be doing what James Comey did. So James Comey has lived a life of lies. So now let's look at the different charges right now that he's being charged with and indicted with. The first one is 18 U.S.C. Section 1001, a false statement. Okay, this statute makes it a crime to knowingly and willfully make a materially false, fictitious, or fraudulent statement in any matter within the jurisdiction of the U.S. government. So he made a false statement. So that's what the first charge is. I want to know what the false statement is exactly. It covers statements made to Congress, federal agencies, and other entities of the federal authority. So apparently he went before Congress and they're saying he gave fraudulent information. The indictment alleges that on September 30th, 2020, in a congressional testimony, Comey was asked whether he had authorized someone at the FBI to act as an anonymous source to media, leaking information about investigations to either Donald Trump or Hillary. He answered that he had not done so. So I don't know what piece of evidence that maybe attorneys have that he did know, but that they're claiming that he did know, and that's why he's being indicted. The indictment claims that the answer was false, that in fact he had authorized or at least acquiesced to such anonymous disclosures. So prosecutors say that this was false testimony material and that would satisfy the element of statute 1001, where basically you are issuing a false statement before a congressional body. The statement was made in a matter within the jurisdiction of federal government where you could actually charge someone with this indictment. It's a lie under oath to Congress, so it adds to the offense. It's a very serious offense. Number 2 is obstruction of a congressional proceeding. This statute prohibits corrupt activities that affect or impede congressional investigations. This is under statute section 18-1505, and it covers efforts to obstruct, influence, impede, or otherwise interfere with the due and proper exercise of the power of Congress. So if you lie under oath, you are impeding, so that's why he got an obstruction indictment as well. So we'll see if this goes anywhere, if he's actually convicted, or it just stays at these charges. And it alleges that the indictment claims Comey corruptly endeavored to influence, this is in quote from the Washington Post, to influence, obstruct, or impede the Senate's investigation into disclosures or leaks of sensitive FBI information. So the whole claim here is that he leaked FBI information. I would not be arresting him over this. Okay, I think you're grappling with something very small right now. However, if they're able to grapple with these small things and it's able to uncover a bigger plot and that dates back either, I want to be honest as a conservative, it either dates back to the Hillary emails, or the Donald Trump collusion hoax, and then having the Mueller investigation come in, Robert Mueller investigation. That's, if it goes back to that, he needs to face jail time because that's serious. But if it's just these smaller issues, then let him go. In other words, by giving false testimony, he's alleged to have interfered with Congress's ability to gather facts, hold oversight, and carry out its investigative functions. So it prohibits obstruction. So here's some things that are required to prove as Congress that a congressional proceeding was actually underway. I believe that can be confirmed because he was literally in front of Congress. That the defendant acted corruptly. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he was just unaware of some of the information. Or that there was a connection between the defendant's act and the congressional process being hindered. If he lied, that's absolutely proven true. That he's hindering Congress's progress. Here's what could happen if he's convicted. I mentioned this already. 5 years in prison, and there are serious felony counts. So that said, an indictment is only an accusation. Comey is presumed innocent unless this is convicted in court. So we'll see if there ends up being a conviction on James Comey. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and there's going to be more to come about James Comey. So we'll get into this a little bit more later. I'm sure when he has a trial that this will all come out, and he'll obviously either be given the verdict, he's innocent, or he's guilty. But for now, let's strive, we can learn today, to tell the truth, and tell the truth instead of lying. We should want our lives to be a collection of truths and not a collection of lies. Because if we tell one lie, we have to cover our lies, and our lives end up becoming a lie. Let's strive to tell the truth today and every single day. I hope you have a great day.